Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Asami and Kuvira? Part 1. Huge shout out to AdventTreader221 for this story. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Nobody steals from the Cho brothers, shouted the smallest of said brothers, as they chased the blonde troublemaker down the street, waving his polearm around. There were 3 of them, and they could be easily told apart just by their height. Really? He asked as he banked around a corner, because I just did. It had been a little difficult getting over the wall, but after that, it was laughably easy to grab the food and stuff it into the bag. It also helped that the brothers didn't exactly focus on their exercise. "You're dead, Naruto," the biggest brother declared. He saw the balcony in front of him and leapt up onto the rail. "Actually, I feel quite alive," Naruto responded as he leapt backwards into the air. That might have seemed crazy for a regular person, but he knew what he was doing. There were lines of clothes being hung out to dry. He reached out, grabbed one, and used it to bounce up into a windowsill. He landed just in time to see the brothers come crashing down all the way to the ground. Glad for the easy cushioning down below, he leapt down and landed easily atop of them. He bounced to his feet and kept running. It didn't take them long to get up and follow him, but he knew the city's streets like the back of his hand. He was only a street away from the gate to the outer city. Once he was there, he could relax a little. The Chows didn't like stepping outside of the inner city. He saw the entrance, a simple arch, and ran right through it. A flock of birds sat on the bridge beyond the arch, but he sent them flying. "Hey, stop!" one of the brothers shouted. "Yeah, right, like I'm gonna fall for that one again," he thought to himself as he leapt up onto the nearby roof. He kept running across the roofs, leaping down and up them as he went, along with some swinging around just to mix it up. He didn't hear them behind him, which proved his theory about them and the outer city. Once he knew he was safe, he started to slow down into a walk. He saw an open balcony nearby and dropped down to it. Letting his legs rest a bit, he sat down to open the bag. But before he could even eat the bread roll in his hand, the Cho brothers landed on the same balcony. He froze for a second at the sight of them. He had been certain that they wouldn't come out of the inner city. Hey fellas," he said nervously. "You're just in time for lunch," Naruto said before he threw the roll at the biggest Cho, hitting him right on the nose. While he was distracted by the pain, he leaped over him to get away, bag in hand. But as his feet landed on the ground, a pole slammed into his legs, knocking him to the ground. Before he could get back up, he was surrounded. "I told you no one steals from us," the smallest brother said with a victorious smirk, kneeling down so he could look him in the eye. Before he could even make a retort, the biggest brother grabbed hold of him and lifted him up into the air. All he could do was smile weakly at the big red bruise of a noise staring at him. But that got him thrown into the air over the city walls to the outskirts. The good news for him was that he landed somewhere soft, so he didn't get hurt badly. The bad news was that the place happened to be one of the pens where they kept the animals, which was full of mud and muck. By the time he was able to get out of the pen, wash off the muck, and head back to his house, the sun was setting on the city and the forest around it. His house was a rickety thing of a single-leveled house, built around a tree. There wasn't a bed inside or anything that actually made it a home, just a table and some carpets, along with a cup and a jug that could hold tea. But still, it was his home. When he stepped through the entrance, he saw a young man by the name of Jaya sitting nearby. "Did you steal from the Chows again?" he asked. "Yeah, and I got to nothing show for it except a few dirty rolls and a whole lot of bruises," Naruto complained whilst pulling out the few rolls he managed to pocket in his shirt. He handed one to Jaya and walked over to the back, where one of the blankets they had was draped to make a shadowed tent. He knelt down and offered the roll out. "Hey Yao, I got some food for you," he said softly to the dark corner of the hut. What looked like a tree trunk roughly carved into the shape of a hand reached out to take the roll. The arm and body the hand belonged to came into light, revealing an old man who looked to be half a tree, especially around his face. Delicious," he declared as he scarfed down the roll. "Thank you, Naruto." Naruto sat down across from Jaya and was about to eat his roll when a couple of animals came into the house and looked up at him. "You guys are hungry too, huh?" he asked them. He didn't expect an answer from them, knowing full well that they couldn't speak. He tore his roll into tiny pieces and scattered it all over the floor. The animals all gladly converged on the crumbs, eating away happily. "Naruto, you should eat," Jaya told him. "They need it more than I do. Besides, I'm tired of eating scraps." He reached over to the nearby jug and cup, pouring some tea for himself. It was a weak tea that tasted more like water than anything else. If only there was some way to get into the Chow's food cellar. We'd be eating like Chow's. If Cho the Elder catches you sneaking into his palace, you'll end up dead. Or worse, he'll banish you to the spirit wilds. Those last two words got Yao's attention. "No, don't get banished. You don't want nothing to do with those spirits," he told the two youngsters. "They'll get inside you, scramble up your mind, turn you into a monster." He gestured at himself when he said that last word, practically screaming it out. They both watched as the old man buried his face in his hands and turned away from them, back deeper into his shadowed spot. Jaya looked back at Naruto. "Don't do anything crazy, Naruto," he said cautiously. "You just gotta accept the world is the way it is. Some people have power. Some people don't. And you don't." Naruto sipped at his tea and looked out the nearby window, back out at the city. "Not yet, anyway," he said as an idea came to him. It would be risky, but the reward would be worth it. The leader of the huntsmen stood in one of the outer city's squares. He usually did this kind of asking before each hunt, so he could get more volunteers, and therefore have a better chance of actually getting food. "Are you strong? Are you fearless? Do you have what it takes to battle the spirits?" he asked the people in the square with his men behind him. "Then join the hunt." Even though he did this each dawn before each hunt, he never really expected to answer his call. "Count me in," Naruto said as he came to a stop in front of the group, raising his hand to get their attention, and then lowering it once he was sure he had it. The head huntsman looked him up and down with a questioning look. What he saw didn't impress him, instead it made him laugh. "We're going to be out in the wilds for a week. You wouldn't last 2 seconds. I can handle myself," he told the man with a smug expression and folded arms. The former disappeared when he asked, "We all get fire, right?" "Yeah, but do you know how to use it?" "Well, not exactly, but I—" "Ah, let him come," one of the huntsman's men said as he came around and put his arm around Naruto. "Not like we got any other volunteers lining up." "All right," his leader decided. "Welcome to the hunt," the huntsman said while Naruto just smiled back at him. The walk out of the city and to the edges of the spirit wilds was long enough that the sun had risen up into the sky and turned it blue in the process. But Naruto hadn't really paid attention to that. He was too excited that his plan was working. Also, this was the farthest he had been out of the city and its surrounding area. The path they were walking on came to a sudden stop where the grass met rock, but the hunters kept walking like it was nothing. Naruto followed them as they climbed up a ledge that faced the city, giving them a nice view of it. The lead huntsman took a horn from his belt and blew a long solemn note from it. It echoed in the air for a moment before vanishing away. But that was all that was needed. The city began to shake. Then it rose, revealing it to be resting on the back of a giant animal whose head they were looking at. "The lion turtle," Naruto said in awed wonder, knowing full well what it was. "Great guardian of our city, we are venturing into the spirit wilds to bring back food for our people." Please, grant us the power of fire. The huntsman asked, using his voice loudly and clearly. The power is yours to keep until your return, the lion turtle declared, raising its paw up to hold in front of him. You're first, kid, he told Naruto. He stepped forward, and the lion turtle placed the tips of its claws on his heart and head. May the element of fire protect you against the spirits, it proclaimed. Light glowed from the claws. He could feel power flowing through into him from those claws, filling him with power. When the light died, and the claws pulled back, he could still feel that power. Wanting to test it out, he threw it out in front of him. The fire came roaring out, so quick and powerful he was caught off guard and stumbled back to the ground. He landed with a thump right next to the lead huntsman, who barely looked down at him. Just make sure you aim at the spirits, not us, okay? He said, walking past him. Sure thing, he replied, standing up and looking at his hand for a brief moment. Soon the entire party had the power of fire from the lion turtle. With it, they turned and ventured into the spirit wilds. It didn't take long for them to be completely encompassed by the forest. This was different from the forest around the city. There they felt safe and protected. But here, that safety wasn't there. Everyone stay close, the lead huntsman told the party as they went down the rough path. Spirits love to pick off stragglers. Guys? Naruto said from the back, both legs and voice trembling from fear. I don't think I can do this. The entire party stopped and looked at him when he said that. They weren't happy. Now, quit your whining. We haven't even seen a spirit yet. I think I want to go home. He walked up to Naruto's face, placing his finger right at it. I knew you were nothing but a sniveling coward. Go give your fire back to the lion turtle, he ordered, shoving him back and turning away, and don't ever show your face around me again. He and his hunters walked deeper into the forest, leaving Naruto there. Naruto turned away with a sad expression, but once he was certain that they weren't looking back at him, they fell for it. The blonde thought in triumph as he walked out of the spirit wilds. He had timed it so it was easy to get back to the lion turtle and back to the house. Yao and Jaya were playing Paisho when he stepped through the entrance. Naruto, you're back, Jaya said with some surprise, having expected him to stay in the spirit wilds for much longer than just a day. What goodies did you snatch for us this time? Yao asked, rubbing his belly. Naruto replied by extending his hand forward and bending the fire into his hand. The action surprised both of them, with Yao leaping back with a yelp of fear. It was only reasonable, since he was half tree and would burns. What did you do? Jaya asked Naruto, his voice quickly turning accusing. You can't steal from the lion turtle. Really? Naruto asked, extinguishing the fire and putting on a satisfied smile, because I just did. Night had fallen as Naruto, Jaya, and their compatriots walked to the Chow's palace. The road was unguarded since no one had dared to try to rebel against the Chows. That is until now. But even as they walked, Jaya still had his doubts. You know it's forbidden to bring the power of the element into the city, he told Naruto. Please, go back to the lion turtle and return the fire. But Naruto wouldn't have any of it, Jaya. It's time to stop being so afraid of the Chows, and show them we have the power to change things. Seeing that they were close enough, he reached into the bag he held and took out the mask inside. He put it on, the mask almost making him look spirit-like. Everyone else followed his example with their own masks. Once their identities were hidden beneath the masks, they continued their march up to the palace of the Chows. Naruto stepped forward once they reached the gate and looked up. Hey, Chows, he called out. Open the gate and let us in. His voice was loud enough to get the attention of Cho the Elder, who stepped out onto his balcony to look down at them. What are those filthy peasants doing here? He demanded incredulously. His son stood behind him and heard the same thing he did. Don't worry, father. We'll take care of them, the biggest brother assured him before they all turned to leave. When the gate and the Cho brothers stepped, Naruto felt a wave of satisfaction. Now that he had the power, he could easily beat the three of them without breaking a sweat. But before he could do that, he had to get the food. That was what they had come for. Hand over all the food you're hoarding, and we won't give you any trouble, he demanded. All three of the brothers laughed a high-pitched laugh that was grating on the ears when it was just one. When there were three, the effect was tripled. You're not getting past us, declared the biggest brother. We have the weapons. You're powerless. He pointed said weapon at the man who spoke, emphasizing his point. But all he did was fold his arms. Powerless, huh? He asked, openly mocking them. Identical scowls appeared on their faces. They lowered their polearms and started marching towards the group. But Naruto pulled back his arms and then threw them forward, throwing fire at them. The blast was strong enough to knock them all to the ground and to break the gate wide open. The way into the palace and the food was clear. Follow me, he ordered the group behind him. Together, they all ran into the palace. They ran across the grounds to where the food was stored. Whenever the chalice felt like giving out food, they always took it out of a little well-made shack up against the eastern wall, well inside of the gate. Naruto spotted it right away and broke down the door with his fire. Grab as much food as you can, he ordered. Everyone ran into the shack to grab food to haul home. Maybe you're right, Jaya said, wearing a monkey mask, as he came up to his friend's side. Maybe we do have the power to change things, he said happily to his friend. The group started coming out of the shack with bags of food over their shoulders. It looked like the plan would work. They'd be able to get out of the palace with decent food for once. Stop right there, someone suddenly shouted out. Both Naruto and Jaya looked at where the voice was coming from and saw the brothers coming at them with the palace guard. Looks like the chalice found backup, Jaya stated. Get everyone out of here, Naruto told him. I'll hold them off. He leapt towards the enemy, scattering them with his fire. Surprised by the move, the guards broke away from their formation, making it easier for him. One of the guards came at him with a spear. He grabbed it and swung him around, sending him crashing into the nearest person, who just happened to be the biggest Cho brother. They crashed into the ground while he used his momentum to throw the spear away. A sudden weight landed on his back, and he stumbled. He tried getting the weight off of him, but whoever it was held firm. The guards began to encircle him, waiting for him to fall down. He wouldn't give them that chance. He encircled himself first with the fire, protecting himself from everyone except the person on his back. With a heave, he threw that person onto the ground. But he felt his mask go with him. The person landed on the ground with a thud, turning out to be the smallest Cho brother. No, please, he begged instantly, throwing his hands up into the air. Have mercy. He looked up at the man who would end his life, and saw a familiar face holding fire in his hand. Naruto? He asked himself in shock. Naruto stared down at the brother. It would have been easy to take his life right now. All he would have to do was bring his fist down. But was that what he came here to do? To kill someone? The answer was simple. No, he wasn't. All he wanted was some actual food. He didn't want to become a murderer. He let the fire at his hand and around die away, becoming nothing. As soon as it had, guards slammed into him, sending him to the ground. They grabbed him by the arms and forced him back to his feet. The smallest brother was standing before him, his usual arrogant expression back on his face. Even when you have the power, you're afraid to use it, he declared smugly. After spending a couple days in the Chow's dungeon, Naruto was taken outside the city at dusk. At the ledge where the huntsman had sounded the horn, he stood in front of the Cho family whilst the lion turtle watched from behind. Tell me who else was involved in the rebellion, and I might take mercy on you, Cho the elder told him. Naruto knew that the elder man would do no such thing. His greed wouldn't let him take such a slight lying down, and they'd either be killed or banished. Both were grim outlooks, and he wouldn't let it come to that. Naruto stared at them all in defiance. "I'm not telling you anything," he declared. He wasn't going to sell out his friends. "Then you've left me no choice. Naruto, you are hereby banished," he declared. His shoulders slumped in defeat when he heard those words. To be banished was a death sentence. No one survived outside of the city. The smallest brother was happy about the proclamation. "Yeah," he added to his father's order. "And give back the fire you stole." He sneered at the thief coldly. The guards at his side grabbed his arms and started dragging him to the lion turtle. "No. Wait," he said, struggling against their grip. But they pushed him forward so he stood alone. He looked up at the animal that carried their city, hoping that the plea he had would be heard. "Great Lion Turtle, I am sorry for stealing the fire from you, and I accept my punishment. But please, I need to be able to protect myself in the wilds," he pleaded with the ancient creature. "Never again may you return to this city," the Lion Turtle declared, making his hopes fall. But the Lion Turtle was not done. "But I will allow you to keep the power of the element." His hopes rose again at that proclamation. He bowed his head in grateful respect. "Thank you," he said. "Go." The lion turtle closed its eyes and lowered itself back into the ground, its head disappearing into the earth. Naruto turned around and saw the looks of surprise on the guards and the Chow's faces. He started to walk past them, feeling much braver than he had a moment before. As he passed the smallest brother, he whispered, "Coward." "What did you say?" the brother screamed, lifting his weapon. "Leave, Naruto," ordered Cho the Elder now. His guards grabbed the boy by the arms and pulled him away from the family, pushing him towards the spirit wilds. He took one last look at the city, his home since he had been born. His bravado disappeared and was replaced by sadness. He turned his back and walked into the spirit wilds. Both Yao and Jaya watched him leave from the high branches of the tree they lived in. "Bet he doesn't last till morning," Yao told Jaya sadly. Naruto had thought that the spirit wilds had been unnerving in the daylight, but in the night, it was downright nerve-wracking. He had lit a fire in his hand to give him light, but that didn't help much. His eyes darted from side to side, seeing everything while his ears heard everything. His mind raced with thought that something was out there, waiting to come and get him. He heard something move behind him and instantly turned around. What was that? He thought, looking for the danger. He saw it again in the form of a spirit coming towards him. He threw his fire at it, hoping that would be enough to destroy it. But the spirit broke apart and reformed into two smaller versions, flying away into the forest. He kept moving, but it seemed like the spirits were following him everywhere he went. Anytime they got close, he would throw fire, but they always seemed to avoid it. "Where are they?" he asked as he turned in place, trying to find them. When he took a step back, his foot landed on something squishy and yet resistant. "Hey, watch where you're stepping, human," a tiny voice instantly complained. He swung his fire around, trying to find where the voice was coming from but could see nothing. "Who said that?" he demanded. "Down here." He looked down and saw a spirit in the shape of a blue frog pulling itself out from under his sandal. "How'd you like it if I started walking all over you?" it asked in an annoyed tone of voice. He breathed in relief at the sight of it. "You're just a little frog." The frog pulled itself completely free and instantly grew to a size that towered over him, scaring him and making him lose his fire. "Who's little now?" it demanded with a much deeper voice. He didn't see that coming. The frog tried to stomp down on him with his foot, but Naruto stumbled out of the way, falling to the ground. He turned around and ran away, missing the frog's tongue in the process. He neared some plants before finally stopping, thinking that he was safe from harm. But then no sooner than he had stopped that one of the plants reached out and swallowed. "Ah! I'm trapped! I'm trapped!" he screamed inside his head while fighting to get free. The only way he could get out was when he threw fire in the mouth, making it so hot that it had to spit him out with a burp. The burp woke up the other planets, and so he ran. He ran hard and fast away from them, hoping that he wouldn't be chased by them. He already had to deal with spirits. He didn't want to have to deal with man-eating plants that could move too. He finally stopped to look back. No plants were following him, finally safe. He thought in relief, falling down to the grass. He laid there, trying to catch his breath. He was beginning to understand why being banished was a death sentence. This was his first night, and he had already been attacked twice. It wasn't even the third hour of his banishment. I need to find a safe place, he thought to himself. But before he could even do that, the grass beneath him sprouted vines and grabbed hold of him, dragging him down into it. He struggled against it, muffled screaming coming between the vines in his mouth as he was brought further down. But it wasn't until he used fire to burn the vines off that he got free. The grass stopped moving and he tore out of it, running for his life deeper into the forest. When day came around, Naruto was still alive. He just hadn't slept the entire night, and it showed in the rings under his eyes. He hadn't stopped moving the entire night, always looking out for whatever would come at him next. But that didn't mean everything was all right. He was tired and hungry. When he passed under a tree with large fruits hanging from the branches, his stomach growled at the sight of them. They were hanging right there, looking so fresh and tasty. One couldn't hurt, right? He asked himself. He reached out and plucked one off the branch. He held it in his hands for a moment, taking it all in, and then bit down for that first juicy taste he was hoping for. But the fruit vanished in his hands. Instead, there were hornets buzzing all around him, and were all aiming at him. They buzzed around his head, trying to sting him. He started running around, trying to get them away. "Get off me! Get off me!" he screamed, swatting at them while trying to run. His efforts led him to running to the edge of a nearby cliff. It took him a second to realize that he actually ran over the edge before falling down it. The good news was that he lost the hornets on the way down. The bad news was that he got a couple of more scrapes and bruises each time he hit the cliff, which was more than just a few times. When he finally landed at the bottom, he laid there against the cliff face. "I want to go home," he thought miserably. He had barely gotten through one night in the wilds. He was tired, he was hungry, and he was lonely. He missed everything there was about his old life. The house he lived in might have been in a tree, but he had a roof over his head. The food he had might have been scraps, but he was fed. He might have been at the bottom of the social order of the system, but he had friends. He missed them all now than he ever had. The sound of gently moving water filled his ears, and he looked up. He saw an oasis just out of reach. Fruit-bearing trees hung around the pool that lay in the center. The water itself, around and in the oasis, looked cool and clean. The only way onto it was by a single stone bridge. But that wasn't a concern now. He found a place to eat and rest. He just had to get there. Finding the energy to stand up and walk was easy, since he had the motivation in front of him. He quickly reached the stone bridge and started crossing it. But then a spirit, shaped like one of the eyes he had seen in the city's forest but standing up, appeared in front of him and shoved him away, hard. "You are not welcome in my oasis, human," it declared with folded arms. Naruto got back to his feet slowly. "Please help me," he begged. "I'm starving and I haven't slept all night." He just wanted to rest. But the spirit didn't seem to be in the mood to budge. "Not my problem," it seemed to shrug. He was tired, he was hungry, and above all, he was irritated. Food and drink was just outside his reach, and he was being denied it. "Let me pass," he ordered, throwing fire at the feet of the spirit. To his satisfaction, the spirit looked surprised at it. But then it turned into anger. "You dare use fire against me?" it demanded in outrage. It vanished from sight for a quick second before reappearing behind Naruto. "Now, be gone with you," it said before it grabbed him by the shoulders and tossed him into the nearby bush. Then it headed back to the oasis without a second thought. He burst out of the bush, afraid that it would come alive. But it didn't, and he was left on the path. He watched dejectedly as the eye spirit left him there. The oasis was out now, and he had hoped that wouldn't be so. He slumped his shoulders in defeat and walked away. But after a few seconds, he noticed that there was a virtual convoy of spirits passing by him. He backed into the bush, afraid that they might do something to him. But they walked past him, heading straight for the oasis. Once they passed the eye spirit, they would drink, eat, and bath in the oasis. That might make this easier, he thought as he came up with an idea. It took a few moments, but once he stepped out of the bush, he was clad head to toe in it. He joined the convoy and walked across the bridge. The eye spirit saw him right away. And who might you be? It asked him curiously. He had an answer for it, and made sure to make it sound dramatic enough to be a spirit. I am Bushy, the bush spirit, he declared to the oasis guardian, and I would like to enter your oasis, he told the eye spirit. The eye spirit hummed to itself, very well. It said after a moment of puzzlement, you may pass. Naruto thought he was fine as he passed the spirit. But then it started sniffing the air. Wait a second, it declared, grabbing his head, something stinks. It said as it pulled off the mask and revealed Naruto to all of the spirits there. I knew I smelled a human. Naruto grinned sheepishly at being caught, like he had whenever he was caught in the city. But the guards usually didn't grab him by the shoulders and toss him into the water. No, that would have been too considerate. His costume came apart in the water as he sat back up and hacked out what went down. When he could breathe again, he looked up at the spirits on the bridge. Come on, let me in, just for a little while, he pleaded. No, snapped the eye spirit, go back to your lion turtle. Believe me, I'd love to go back home, he retorted as he stood back up. But I can't. I was kicked out. The fact of that still hit him hard, just like the fact that he missed what he had left behind hit hard. That's too bad, one of the spirits surrounding the eye spirit remarked. Poor human, said a second one. They actually sounded kinder than the eye spirit. Of course, it had something to say about the whole situation. Don't pity him. He's just like every other human, ugly, destructive, and lacking any respect for nature. It said to its fellow spirits. Who are you calling ugly? Naruto fired back, placing his hands on his hips. All the spirits looked at the eye for a reply, but he was too surprised at the retort to come up with one so quickly. So he settled for a grunt and placed his hands on his hips too. If you can't go back to your city, then you should go live in another one, the first friendly spirit suggested. That suggestion stopped him for a second, and he stared at the spirit in disbelief. What? There are other lion turtles? He couldn't help but ask. He had thought there was only one, and he had lived on it. There are other lion turtles? Mocked the eye spirit before shouting at him again. Of course there are, dozens of them. Boy, you humans are stupid. Despite the fact that he had just been called stupid, a hope began to fill Naruto. If there were other lion turtles out there, and they all had cities on their backs, he could find one. He could make a new life for himself. So which way to the nearest lion turtle city? He asked. Let me think. The eye said, seemingly thinking it over, before replying with, I think it's on the other side of None of Your Business Valley, he said before he proceeded to laugh loudly and looked at the other spirits for support, but no one else was laughing with him. Neither was Naruto. If anything, he was more irritated by it. He was trying to get out of their way so he could find another lion turtle, but all they did was make light of it. Why did he even bother? Real funny, he told the eye spirit. You know what? I don't need your help. I'll find it myself, he said as he turned around and walked through the pond, intent on getting back on dry land away from them. But after a few steps, he suddenly fell deeper into the pond. Naruto managed to pull himself out of the water and walk off into the forest with what remained of his dignity. He wasn't aware of when his clothes had dried, but he was more focused on the fact that he was still hungry and thirsty. Why didn't he get some water while he was still in the pond? Oh wait, he knew. He didn't want to look desperate in front of the spirits. Damn his pride. He came upon a tree that had a bounty that was unusual, but one he was glad to see. A cat deer was trapped in a net, trying to struggle free but failing. The sight of potential food motivated himself forward. He licked his lips and brought fire to his hands. But as he approached, the cat deer looked at him. It didn't hiss or snarl at him, warning him to stay away. It stared at him with a look of surrender. It looked at him knowing full well what he wanted and could do nothing to stop him. It let out a pained whimper and Naruto stopped, losing the fire. He couldn't do it. He wouldn't be a murderer just so he could eat. But he couldn't just leave it hanging there. He walked up towards it, and it growled in response. "It's okay," he assured the animal, "I'm gonna get you out of there." He told it in a soothing voice. He looked to the tree and started climbing it, reaching the branch that held the net's knot. But before he could even reach out to untie it, the hunting group from the city appeared on the other side of the path, coming up to the tree. "Finally, we caught something," the leader said. "Get it down." They started moving towards the net, only to stop when Naruto stepped onto the branch and into sight. "Back off," he ordered the group. "Naruto?" said the leader in surprise, coming to a stop. "What are you doing here?" he asked in surprise. "I'm saving this animal," Naruto responded truthfully. "That animal's our dinner. Now get out of the way." A man snarled at him. "Heh, more like food for those fat-ass chows who like to lord the fact they ate so lavishly, while others starved to death." "No!" Naruto declared before leaping down, blasting down fire at them. They scattered from the blast, and he was able to land safely. But he knew that he was outnumbered. So he did what he thought was best and ran into the forest. Some might have called it cowardly, but he was smart enough to know it was his only chance. He soon heard the hunters behind him, and soon came the fire being thrown at him. Don't look back at them, just keep moving, he told himself. If he looked back, he would slow down and they would catch up to him. He kept running, only to come to a stop when he noticed a familiar patch of grass in front of him. Oh crap. He looked back and saw that the hunters were catching up to him. He had to do something to escape from them. He looked up and saw vines hanging from the trees, just out of reach. Then he looked back and saw one of the hunters about to grab him. He jumped for one, grabbed hold of a vine, and used his momentum to swing to the other side. He landed on his feet and kept running. From behind, he could hear the hunter crying out, "Ah! He help! Help!" before suddenly going silent, and he knew that the grass had gotten him. He slowed down a little to see if they were still coming after him. They were. What now? He asked himself, looking around again for something that could aid him. He saw some hornets disguised as fruits hanging from a nearby tree. He grabbed hold of two and threw them at the hunters as they came into sight. Once they left his hands, he started running again. One of the hunters started shouting, "Get him off! Get him off!" Then his voice faded away with a scream. There's only two left, Naruto thought to himself in ragged triumph as he kept running. The odds were better now, but he still needed to beat them. As he tried to think up a way to do just that, the remaining hunters started throwing fire at him again. One throw landed right behind his feet and exploded, sending him flying through the air until he crashed into a tree branch and landed on the ground, dazed and unable to move. The hunters caught up to him quickly after that. "Well, looks like you're all out of tricks, Naruto," the leader declared. There was nothing Naruto could do except watch them bring fire to their hands. But it was here that the Eye spirit appeared from behind them, and then leapt into the other huntsman, possessing him. His body started contorting and twisting itself about as it took control. "I really hate humans," it declared loudly, the huntsman's body morphing into something that was half human and half spirit, like Yao was. No, no! The lead huntsman screamed in fear as the spirit-possessed hunter took a few swings at him, turning away and fleeing from the scene, not once looking back. The eye spirit left the hunter, appearing behind him. After being dazed for a second or so, the hunter saw his hands, felt his face, and realized what he had become. So he ran away screaming, "I don't know what he's screaming about." The spirit remarked as it picked up Naruto, "He's better looking now," it said to himself as he walked away. The eye spirit took him back to the oasis. Whatever odd looks the others gave him, he ignored them as he put Naruto into the water and stepped away, letting the water do its thing. It began to glow and engulf Naruto with its glow. As he floated there, noticing the cat deer he had saved was right above him, and he noted that he didn't feel so tired or hurt anymore. "I feel great," he proclaimed as the glow died away. "What's in this water?" he asked in curiosity. "It has special healing properties," the eye spirit told him as he sat up. One of the spirits offered him a fruit. "Thanks," he said, taking it and taking a bite. "So what did you do to that hunter?" he asked the eye spirit. Spirits are able to take over a human body for a short time. If I stayed in there any longer, I would have killed him, which I did consider, it added as an afterthought. "Thanks for saving my neck. But why'd you do it?" he asked. This was the same spirit that was belligerent and hostile to him only a few hours earlier. The change was a little surprising. "I saw you save the cat deer from those hunters," the spirit told him as the cat deer in question padded forward and rubbed its cheek against Naruto's. He patted the other cheek in return. "I'd never seen such an act of selflessness from a human before," it admitted to the blonde. "Told you I wasn't like the others," he told the spirit before standing back up on his own 2 feet. "Guess I underestimated you, human." One of the other spirits approached Naruto, a curious-looking creature that looked like a tall, misshapen plant with a kind face. "Are you off to find another lion turtle city?" it asked him. "I was. But I think I've had enough of humans for a while." He had come to that conclusion whilst dealing with the hunters. Only thinking hard about it now, I've decided to stay here and learn the ways of the spirits. "What a great idea." "That'll be fun," said another spirit, who looked more vaguely like an animal but more see-through. Now, hold on. A human living with spirits?" asked the eye rhetorically. "It's never been done." "First time for everything, right?" asked Naruto. It thought the idea over for a second. I guess we can try it. I've never had a human as a pet before. I think I'll call you Stinky," it said looking at Naruto. "The name is Naruto," he corrected the spirit with an annoyed look. "Stinky is more accurate," the eye spirit said with a smirk. And so he stayed there at the oasis, living amongst the spirits. It was a little tough, he could admit to that. They didn't see things the way he did, and did things in their own time. The eye spirit seemed to enjoy surprising him from out of nowhere, trying to get him to jump out of his skin, and usually while he was sleeping. He didn't try to hit it or anything, mostly because he couldn't. The spirit would leap away before it could get hit, laughing like it was his own personal joke. But still, Naruto found that he liked it there. When the hunters found the oasis, and all the fruit just begging to be taken off of their branches, Naruto fought them off. They kept coming back, and he kept driving them away with minor injuries. It was only a month after he started staying at the oasis that one of them finally got a lucky shot through, hitting him good in the shoulder. Even though the hunters were driven away, he had to be carried back to the oasis to heal. "Ah, that stings," he groans as the water heals him. His eyes were closed, and he relaxed into the pond. "You're lucky, that was the only place they hit Stinky," the eye spirit said from behind him. "It was stupid to step in like that." "I had it." "You got yourself hurt. Stinky really hurt this time," the eye spirit remarked. He frowned. I got them away, didn't I? I know how to use fire to defend the oasis. You know how to use fire just as well as the other humans. It told Naruto. I know that. He responded with a sigh. If anything, he knew how to use it better than the huntsman. How else would he have been able to drive them away again and again? They only had their fire sometimes. He had his every second of every day. He means to say that you wield it just as pathetically as they do. A deeper voice rumbled, oddly from above him. He opened his eyes, and saw a giant white dragon hovering in the air over the oasis. He stood up from the water, but doing so quickly made him woozy and stumble a little. But he couldn't tear his gaze away from the dragon. Hi? He offered. The dragon didn't return his greeting, only choosing to look down at him with disdain. You wield your fire like it's some kind of club, just whacking it around senselessly and without direction. It told him, but if you learn properly, you'll find it much easier to use. It stated honestly. And are you going to teach me? He asked, unsure if he should bow his head in respect or try and run. He knew the stories about dragons. Some said that they were dangerous monsters that would kill someone as soon as they laid eyes on them. Others said that they held vast treasures jealously. And some said that they were benevolent creatures that kept to themselves. Yes, but only because I owe him a favor, it said, looking down at the spirit for a long moment. But then it turned its gaze to him. Rest well. Your training will begin soon. Okay. He sat back down in the water, letting it cool and continued to heal his wound. But he couldn't help but wonder, what exactly can the dragon teach me about using fire? As it turned out, the dragon could teach him a lot. He became a student, and that went on for months, which then turned into 2 years. With each lesson he took and learned, he found that the dragon was right. How he wielded fire was crude and graceless. But as he learned, he turned into something more flexible and graceful. He didn't just use the fire. It was more like it was a part of his body, bent to action by his mind. As practical lessons, he used the attacks by the huntsman to help him. There he could see the difference between them, and he could barely keep his laughter in. They were throwing their fire like it was some kind of projectile. They could do so much more with it then, and yet they didn't. It was a simple matter of turning it against them and driving them off time and time again. The spirits were glad for his assistance. They started seeing him less of a curiosity and more like a friend. As the years passed, he got older. His spiky blonde hair got less spiky and was more prone to falling down over his head. He could have grown a beard if he wanted to, but chose to settle for just a short and simple goatee. With each year that passed, the attacks got less and less until they finally stopped coming. And while Naruto was relieved that happened, he soon got bored. He had finished his lessons with the dragon, and he was beginning to have an itch to see the rest of the world. So he made his choice and began packing up a few supplies. The spirits didn't protest him for his wish, but they were sad when he was ready to leave them. You ready to go, Mula? He asked the cat deer he had saved all those years ago when he had climbed onto her back. He had learned her name from one of the spirits who could communicate with animals. Are you sure you want to leave? The spirit asked him. Over the years, despite all the arguing and pranking with each other, the two of them had become good friends. Now it was sad to see him leave. Yes. It's time I see the rest of the world and find the other lion turtle cities. It was something that he had wanted to do when he first came to the spirit wilds, but had put it aside to defend the oasis. Now he was going to do it. The spirit didn't argue with him or call him an idiotic human like he was prone to do when they argued. Instead, all it said was, "I'm proud to call you my friend, Stinky." He chuckled at that old insulting nickname, having long stopped being annoyed by it. Thank you for everything, my friend. Goodbye, everyone. He told all the spirits there before urging Mula forward. She took off with barely any urging, racing over the bridge and into the wilds. We'll miss you. One of the spirits called after him. He would miss them too. Naruto and Mula had no particular destination in mind in their journey. They just chose to go where the path took them. When they were tired, Naruto would make camp, and they would sleep. When they were hungry, they would eat. When they were thirsty, they would drink. This cycle kept them going through the world for 2 weeks now, yet they found no other lion turtles or humans. When they came across a wide stream, they stopped to drink. While Mula dipped her head down to drink, Naruto filled up his sack with the stuff before taking a drink. "Ah, this is nice," he thought to himself. It was a nice sunny day, and he was almost tempted to just lean back against a nearby tree and relax the day away. The ground started shaking suddenly, and spirits came running out of the nearby forest. Both Naruto and Mula watched them run in confusion. Spirits weren't known for running from anything, not any they knew. What was happening? "The all-powerful spirits are battling," cried one of the spirits. "They're gonna wipe out the entire valley," shouted another in fright. "All-powerful spirits?" asked Naruto silently. "What are they talking about?" he questioned as the ground continued to shake in the direction they were all running from. He leapt onto Mula's back, and they went towards the shaking. After they came through the forest, Mula halted with a growl, not wanting to go another step further. Why? Because there were two spirits locked in combat, as they appeared to loom over them both. Two spirits, one blue-white and one red-black, were wrestling each other. They weren't shaped like any spirit he had seen before. The closest thing he could think of was a kind of squid. After watching them, he saw that the white spirit was holding the black spirit down, preventing it from getting away. He leapt down to the ground and blasted a stream right between them. "Stop or you'll destroy everything," he shouted once he had their attention. "This doesn't concern you, human," a stern woman's voice told him. Even though he saw no mouths on the spirits, he had the feeling that the voice came from the white spirit. The black spirit broke free of her grip and tried to run, but she grabbed it again and slammed into the ground. It does when the lives of spirits and animals are in danger. "If you're a friend to spirits, then use your fire to help me break free," a man's voice pleaded with him. This time, he felt like the voice came from the black spirit. "Don't involve the human. This is between us," the white spirit told him. "Please save me. She has tormented me for 10,000 years," he begged the blonde. 10,000 years? Naruto repeated in stunned awe. In hindsight, he should have just let them be and walked away. He considered it for only a moment before bending his fire at the white spirit. "Let him go," he ordered. The fire didn't seem to do anything to the spirit, except make her irritated enough to swing one of her tentacles at him with enough force to send him flying into the nearby bush. Luckily, he landed on some of the soft bush and didn't get anything to hurt. He walked out and saw the two spirits were still fighting. They both looked similar. Even the markings of the front looked to be the same. The only thing that separated them was their color. But even that seemed to get mixed up as they fought each other. They got tangled up only to get loose, and then repeat the process over again. If the black spirit wanted to get free, he was having a hard time seeing how. But then he noticed how when they stretched apart, only their tails were connected. If he struck them there, they would separate. He swung himself into an arc, bringing the fire down right at that breaking point. The fire struck the point they connected, and an explosion erupted from the side of it. It was just as bright as it was loud, forcing Naruto to cover his eyes, but not his ears. He heard the white spirit scream in pain as the orb faded away, and the black spirit flew out of her grasp. "Thank you, human," the black spirit said to Naruto from atop a nearby mountain peak. "You have performed a great service for the spirits." Without another word, he flew away and disappeared behind the mountains. "Do you realize what you've done?" the white spirit demanded of him. She looked smaller than before. "Yeah, I helped a spirit who was being bullied by you," he retorted with righteousness in his voice, staring her down, which was a little weird since she didn't have eyes, and using that same righteousness to point his finger accusingly at her. "You are gravely mistaken," she retorted. "I was keeping him under control," she told Naruto. "And what gives you the right?" he asked angrily. She turned her head, he supposed, to look at him. "You don't even know who I am, do you?" she asked him softly. "Should I?" Naruto asked the spirit. "Yes. My name is Rava," it told him honestly. He had a look of slight confusion on his face at her proclamation, but she kept going. "That spirit you freed is Vaatu. He is the force of darkness and chaos. I am the force of light and peace. Since the beginning of time, we have battled over the fate of this world. And for the past 10,000 years, I have kept darkness under control and the world in balance, until you came along." With each word she spoke, he found himself realizing what she said had been the truth. He didn't know the names, but he had heard the stories about light and darkness battling each other since the beginning of time. And he had just intervened in that very fight, thinking it was just two spirits fighting each other. "So, by freeing Vaatu, I let chaos into the world?" he asked. "Precisely," Rava said sharply. "The human and spirit realms are headed toward annihilation, and it's all your fault," she told the blonde in an anger-filled voice, though it wasn't entirely directed at him. Naruto looked up at the spirit, wanting to explain himself. "Do not give me excuses. The human and spirit realms are headed toward annihilation, and it's all your fault," she told him again, like she was talking to a child who couldn't understand what she was saying. "This is why humans have no place interfering in the business of spirits. This world is home to all of us, and what happens here is everyone's business," he told her. "Thanks to you, this world may cease to exist." Rava snapped at him. "I only hope I can track down Vaatu before it's too late." "Let me help you," he offered the spirit. If it was his fault for letting Vaatu get away, then he was responsible for making sure that he was contained again. "I don't want or need your help. Don't interfere with me again, human," she told Naruto before she flew up into the air and went after her dark counterpart, disappearing behind the mountains like he had done. Naruto and Neela watched as the white spirit departed without saying anything. What could they say to the spirit? "Let's get moving," Naruto finally told the cat deer. Together, they started to take the long way around the mountains. Rava might have refused his help, but that didn't mean he wouldn't try tracking Vaatu himself. They followed what Naruto thought where Vaatu went for a month, but did not see either him or Rava. All spirits that they had met hadn't seen them either, and didn't want to see them by the sound of it. Yet, they persisted in following the two spirits. Naruto was so focused for making up for his mistake that trying to find the other lion turtles was put aside. He was riding Neela through a bamboo forest path when they saw a tall tree with fruit shaking nearby. While this was normally nothing to be concerned about, they could feel no wind blowing. He urged her into the forest, and she obeyed, their curiosity urging them on. They reached the tree and saw an amazing thing. Men in robes were harvesting the tree. It was a tall tree, and they weren't climbing it. No, they were using wind to ascend and pluck the tree. "Do you see that, Neela?" Naruto said to his friend, "People. And they have some kind of wind power," he said in excitement. He urged Neela into the clearing with the other people, giddy with excitement. "More humans," he said loudly as he looked at them all, and they did the same. "I found you," he said happily, though the men he found, 5 of them, reacted in a way that he wasn't expecting. They turned and ran away from him. "Wait. I'm friendly," he tried to explain to them, but they wouldn't listen to his words. With that, Neela raced after them, while they used their power to leap through the bushes and branches, vanishing from sight. When the two of them cleared the forest's end, they found themselves running full force to the edge of a cliff. Neela stopped in time to prevent her from going over the edge, but in doing so she sent Naruto flying off of her back. He was only airborne for a second or two before coming down on a tree jutting out of the cliff side, holding onto the bush with all he had. Then he started climbing back up to the cliff and to stability. As he put his arms on the ground, he took a moment to breathe. He heard footsteps before he saw one of the men coming running at him. For a panic moment, he thought that the man would run on his hands and send him falling into the abyss below. But the man didn't do that. Instead, he leapt into the air and used the wind to guide his feet to the forest that was appearing out of the sky below the cliff. But as Naruto climbed back up and stood up, he turned around to get a better look and instantly knew better. The legends are true. Another lion turtle city. And it's flying, he said in wonder as he watched the lion turtle just float there in the air. The men he saw in the forest stood before the lion turtle on its forearm, whilst it touched their head and hearts, taking the power it had given back. I have got to get over there, he told himself. He quickly figured out a way to get onto the lion turtle. It involved bending a young, and therefore flexible, tree back and then using it to send him flying. Mula helped him take the rope he had tied to the tree and run around a nearby boulder, pulling the tree back to what he thought was the right angle. He took the rope from the cat deer's mouth and tied a quick knot, securing it. There, that should do it, he declared after testing the rope and finding it taut. Once he was sure, he climbed up onto the tree, sitting right there at the top. Okay, Mula. Wish me luck, he told his friend. With one quick swing of fire, the rope burned apart, the tree snapped forward, and he was flying towards the lion turtle. He could feel the wind pressing against his entire body. That, along with a feeling of falling through the sky, said more than a shiver of excitement jolting up his body. He screamed in 2 parts excitement and 3 parts horror. But as gravity began to take control of him again, and he fell down more than forward, he saw that he wasn't as close to the lion turtle as he wanted to be. His screaming turned more to panic as he passed under the lion turtle's shell. For a second, he thought that this was the way he was going to die. But he saw vines hanging off the lion turtle's shell, and one was within reach. He grasped it with both hands, feeling the burn in them as he fell a couple more inches. But then he stopped, only swaying in the air with the vine, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Once he climbed up the vine onto the lion turtle's back, he started walking around the city there. Well, city might have been an overstatement. This was nothing like the city he grew up in and around. This actually looked more like a village built in tandem around the forest. He saw no buildings made of stone, only of wood. The paths were straight and coordinated, only going where it felt natural. But what was most amazing was the fact that the people around him were different. They didn't wear clothes like he did, just the robes he saw the harvesters wore. But the men also had no hair on their heads, only a strange kind of blue tattoo that over the head that ended right above their brows. It also seemed to stretch across their arms too. As he strolled, a spirit passed right in front. He flinched away in surprise, but watched it float away. The inhabitants didn't seem to mind the spirits like his city would have. It was something different, something interesting. Wow, he said as he took all of it in. Wanting to make introductions as quickly as possible, Naruto ran up to the nearest group of people, which were 3 men just sitting around. Hi, how are you? I'm Naruto. He introduced himself to them. They didn't say anything in reply, choosing to just look at him. He felt awkward but kept talking. Sorry to interrupt, but it's been a while since I've seen other humans, he explained. Where did you come from, stranger? One of the men asked him, his voice kind but also curious. Now that he could answer, another lion turtle city far away. For the past 2 years, I've been living among the spirits and exploring the wilds, he told the man. Remarkable. Come, sit with us, he offered as a spirit hopped onto his shoulder. We would love to hear of your travels, he told him curiously. But before Naruto could even take him up on that offer, the spirit started to shake in place before transforming into something darker. Before, it was green with soft edges and a curious look to its eyes behind its yellow beak. But now it was a dark red, its edges had grown sharper, and where the beak had been was now a mouth. It leapt off the man's shoulder at Naruto, but he ducked to avoid it. It didn't seem to matter much to it, choosing to just run off somewhere. What is going on? Naruto thought as he looked around. All the spirits in sight turned dark and were spreading chaos all over the village. People were running from them, shouting and screaming in panicked fear. Unfortunately, it didn't take him long to get an answer. It came in the form of a shadow falling over the village. When he turned to see what was casting the shadow, his eyes hardened. "Vatu," he said in recognition. The spirit of chaos looked down at him. "So, we meet again, human." It remarked like it was a surprising but also amusing thing. The men he was just talking to him walked up behind him and saw Vatu as well. "Why is the great spirit of the darkness here, but not his other half?" one of them asked. He couldn't help but wince a little at that question. I'll explain later," he told them before jogging a little closer to Vatu. "Leave these people in peace," he called out. "They've done nothing to harm you," he told Vatu. What he got for an answer was a dark spirit flying so close to him that he was forced to duck and avoid it. The dark spirit went after a mother and her child. He drove it off with his fire, but that got the attention of all the dark spirits. They converged upon him, and he fought them off. They tried to surround him, but he stopped them from doing that. They tried going after the villagers, and he stopped them from doing that too. Eventually, they stopped attacking and looked up at Vatu. Naruto did the same. He saw that the dark spirit was rising up and ready to strike. He stood ready to defend himself, but then a streak of white struck Vatu. "Be gone!" Rama commanded her counterpart as they flew into the bushes. She came out and flew around Naruto and the villagers, driving away the dark spirits. "How are you feeling since our split, Rava?" Vatu asked as he flew calmly and almost serenely up into the air. "I've never been better. When harmonic convergence comes, I will destroy you forever," he told the light counterpart, and with that last word said, he flew away, and so did the dark spirits. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief once the battle was done, but all that got him was Rava's attention. "I told you not to interfere," she snapped at him. "I had to do something, Rava," he protested. These people were in danger. The villagers all gathered around them. "Great Spirit of Light, we thank you for your help," one of the men in the front said to her. "But how did you become split from Vatu?" "Ask him," she declared, somehow managing to look down at Naruto. He could feel the eyes of everyone on him and turned to face them all. "It wasn't my fault. Vatu tricked me into freeing him. I'd take it all back if I could," he swore to them. "It's too late for that. Now that Vatu is free, he is turning other spirits dark. The more spirits he turns, the stronger he becomes." That was when he noticed something between the two of them. "He's getting bigger, and you're getting smaller," he said, as he noticed already she was much smaller than she had been before, towering over him by barely 3 feet where before it had been much more when they had first met. Also, the details on her markings seemed diminished too. As darkness grows, light fades. He couldn't look at her, but there was something he could do. "I'm sorry for endangering your village," he said to the villagers, "but I promised to set things right." "How?" asked one of them. The answer to that lay in going back to solid ground and speaking to the animal their village was resting on. "Great Lion Turtle, I ask that you grant me the power of air so that I can defeat Vatu before it's too late," Naruto pleaded. The Lion Turtle looked at him with a look of serenity mixed in with some confusion. "You already carry the power of fire," it pointed out. "No human has ever held 2 elements at the same time. I'm not like other humans. I can learn to do it." He had to learn how to do it. Perhaps," it remarked, considering his words, "but to do so, Rama must hold the power for you until you master it." "Ancient One, why would I do that for a human?" asked the aforementioned spirit, "especially one who's caused so much trouble?" Rava, please, I can't let the world fall into chaos because of my mistake. Naruto begged her. Neither of us can defeat Vato alone, but together we have a chance. He pleaded with her again. She was silent for a moment, considering his words. You may be right, she acknowledged. Very well. I will help you to master the power of air, she told Naruto. Thank you. And in return, I will help you restore balance to the world, Naruto promised her. As Naruto, Mula, and Rava left the lion turtle and the village it carried behind, the human looked over at the spirit. What's this harmonic thing Vato was talking about? He asked her. Harmonic convergence, she replied. That is when Vato and I must battle for the fate of the world. That sounded like something that was a big thing. Details were probably going to be needed. How long do we have until then? About a year in your time, she answered. Then we better start training, he said to the spirit of light before setting out. Their journey led them to a nearby volcano that was still leaking out magma. The skies were covered in dark clouds, and the ground was littered in rivers of lava. Once they found a relatively safe spot, Naruto began practicing his firebending one last time, just so he could remember the motions. All right, I'm ready to try air. How's this gonna work? He asked. The only way for me to give you the other element is to pass through your body and combine our energies, Rava explained from where she stood. Great, he said in reply. So you've done this before. It was nice to know that he would be safe. No. This has never even been attempted. It is very dangerous, she told him, as she was unsure of what would happen if this didn't work. At worst he would die, at best it was unknown. He should have figured that he wouldn't be that lucky, but now wasn't the time to lose hope. In fact, now more than ever was the time to keep hope up. That's what they said about living in the spirit wilds, and I survived that. I'm ready. Give me the air, he told Rava. Rava raced up into the air before flying down right through Naruto's chest. The moment she entered and passed through him, it felt like nothing he had ever felt before. It was like all the good memories he had, the good times he had with his friends both human and spirit, the times he was successful in grabbing food, the moments where he defended the oasis, everything mixed into one glorious feeling that slammed home. But he also felt power, more power than he had ever felt commanding fire. It felt like he could take on the entire world and conquer it. Then the moment passed and Rava was outside of him. He fell to his knees, letting his eyes close. Inside his body was a different power. Instead of the fire's warmth and raw energy, he felt peace and calmness. Eager to try out the new element, he took a stance and punched. The air came rushing out in a great gust before vanishing completely. It feels completely different, he remarked. The fire had been strong and powerful, but this felt fluffy. As he looked at his hands, feeling the power in them, a thought came to him, one that begged to be answered. If you and Vata have the same fight every 10,000 years, why hasn't one of you destroyed the other? He asked Rava. He cannot destroy light any more than I can destroy darkness, she explained as he continued to practice bending the air. One cannot exist without the other. Even if I defeat Vato in this encounter, darkness will grow inside me until he emerges again. The same will hold true if Vato defeats me, she told him seriously. That doesn't sound so bad. Even if Vato wins, you'll come back, he pointed out to her. Yes, but you will probably not survive to see it, Rava told him. There was the slightest edge of humor to her voice when she said that. Vato will destroy the world as you know it. Darkness will cover the earth for 10,000 years. It sounded grim in any way he thought about it. And the more he thought about it, the more he came to believe that fire and air would not be enough. If I'm gonna help you battle Vato, then I should visit more lion turtles. That might be the first good idea you had, she remarked with her usual cuttings. He made a face at her. When their journey began, they were alone. Naruto kept training with the air but soon found difficulty in doing so. It was different from the fire and acted differently. The stances he had learned from the dragon didn't work for the air at all, either being too strong or too weak at the wrong times. Arg, this is frustrating. He groaned as he watched the plume of air vanish. The three of them were resting for the night atop a grassy hill. If he looked around, all he could see was just grass, and a lot more grass. What's the problem? Rava asked, curiosity overriding her usual attitude. What I've learned isn't working, he told her. Then learn something new, she told him. She made it sound like it was the easiest thing in the world to do. But that only irritated him. Yes, like it would be so easy to find a spirit to teach me how to properly use air, he told his companion. A thought came to him when he said those words, something that made him change the flow of the conversation. Why is there so much conflict between humans and spirits in the first place? She had an answer for that. This physical world is where humans come from. Spirits come from another realm. At the North and South Poles, the two realms intersect. Over time, more and more spirits have drifted into this world. Humans have been forced apart, settling on the lion turtles who protect them, and losing touch with each other. Most people think they live in the only human city in the world, he said to the Spirit of Light. That was what he had thought for the longest of times. Most humans think only of themselves, no matter how many others are around, she responded softly. But not all of us, he countered. No, not all of you, she admitted, and you might be thinking too highly of your problem. You might yet find an answer. As it turned out, he did find an answer 2 days later, when they came across bison flying through the air. How they flew got his attention, and he followed them, copying their motions as best when he could whenever they had stopped. Rava didn't complain or argue the fact that they were wasting time doing this. In fact, she seemed a little impressed by what he was doing. That was how they spent the autumn, leaving only when Naruto was certain that he had a good grasp of what he was doing. Then, they journeyed south, where Rava knew a lion turtle was resting beneath a deep lake. The lion turtle in question carried a village of fishermen on its back, and agreed to give Naruto the power of water when his case was pleaded. Then, they spent the rest of the winter by the ocean side, because Naruto was inspired by the pull and push of the waves. It was hard going, not only because there were no actual animals to mimic, but a pack of wolves kept trying to eat Mila. That was where he put what he was trying to learn to practical use. He soon put the ferocity of the wolves' attacks into practice of his own, and fending them off became a lot easier. He also learned from them coordination, how to move from attacking to defending in a single motion. When winter ended, they started traveling again. They found a lion turtle carrying a city much like Naruto's old home buried in the desert that held the power of Earth. Receiving that power took a little longer because he actually had to give a good reason for wanting the power of the Earth. Fortunately, he could, and he received the power of the Earth. As they journeyed out of the desert, a sudden sandstorm forced them to hide out in a cave. In that cave, they found badger moles, and Naruto was soon mimicking their movements and helping out in their tunnel digging too. When spring ended and summer began again, they left the desert. Now that he knew all the elements and could bend them, Naruto wanted to refine the bending. He needed to make them better, stronger. So he trained in the woods, making the arts he learned better and better. Every time he was ready to change, Rava was there for him. One afternoon, he was going over the revisions. He had already done fire, and was finishing up water. When he was done, he stood still so Rava passed through him. After she swapped out water for earth, he got back to his feet. When you pass through me, I feel an incredible rush of power, he said before bending up a large chunk of the earth out of the ground. He broke it in half and sent it flying, just like he wanted to. Seeing that he was done, Rava passed through him again, swapping out the earth for air. I feel like I'm changing. The more we practice, the stronger I become, he remarked. Something caught the attention of his nose, making him smell the air. Smells like smoke, he stated. Humans are nearby, Rava told him, landing down beside him. She had been getting smaller and smaller during the year they had been together. The way she was standing now, she barely reached his shoulder. Let's check it out. He hopped aboard Mula, and all three of them went in search of the smoke and the humans. At the edge of the forest was a slope which they stopped at. It allowed them to see a small village down below and the forest burning beyond it. They stared, not at the village, but at the forest beyond. What in the... What they saw needed more answering. They came down the slope and towards the village, but they saw that it was empty. So they angled to go around and see what was burning. As it turned out, it was the villagers setting the trees on fire so they could pull them down and make lumber out of them. One of the villagers saw Rava come flying in and reacted badly. "A spirit!" he shouted, throwing a fireball at her. Naruto was close behind on Mila. When he saw the fireball, he leapt in front of Rava and knocked the spirit away with a small shield of air. "Easy there, fellas," he said loudly, keeping his hands where they could be seen. "We're friendly," he told them. They all stared at him with hostile eyes, and he looked at them too. They were lean but strong. Their clothes were becoming frayed and ragged. If they had come from a lion turtle city, it must have been some time since they had left. As they stared, someone walked forward. "I can't believe it, Naruto?" the man asked in surprise. He might have put on some inches and muscles and grown a small goatee, but Naruto recognized his friend immediately. "Jaya," he said joyously, meeting his friend in a brief hug. "What are you doing out here?" he asked in pure shock. "You inspired us," Jaya explained with a small laugh as they stepped back from each other. "Once we heard that you survived out in the wilds, we decided to try it too," he told him. "That was good to hear. Nobody should have to live under the chows if they had to. Where's Yao? Did he come with you?" he asked, looking around for the old man. The happy expression on his face died away, replaced by a mournful one. "Yes, but sadly he didn't make it. We lost a lot of good men along the way," he said, while Naruto felt sad too. That old man had been a friend of theirs even before he was possessed by a spirit and raised them as his own when he didn't have any to call his. When Rava came to his side, Jaya took note of her. "So why were you protecting this spirit?" "This is Rava. Don't worry. She's not like the dark spirits you've probably run into." "Dark spirits?" he said, making the words sound like they didn't exist. "What's the difference?" "We throw fire at any spirit we see around here, just like they attack any man," he declared. "What?" Naruto asked with wide eyes. That wasn't the Jaya he had known. "You have no idea what you're doing," Rava told the villagers angrily. "You're only making things worse," she called out. They all scowled at her, clearly not wanting to hear her words. Someone might have said something to her if another villager hadn't looked back and shouted, "The spirits are coming back," where they all looked in the direction he had and saw the incoming tide of spirits. "Let's wipe him out this time," Jaya told the villagers, turning to face them all. "We'll burn down this whole forest if we have to," he called. They all roared in agreement and ran towards the spirits, eager for the fight. "What happened to you?" Naruto asked his friend. "When did you become so violent?" "You showed me we could change the world if we just stopped being so afraid. Now we're doing it," he replied before rushing off to join the other villagers. Naruto just stared at his friend's retreating backside. "This isn't what I had in mind," he said, as he had made friends with the spirits. "Why couldn't they?" The villagers and the spirits met on a small field outside of the village. They didn't attack each other right away. Instead, they stood a few yards away from each other, seizing them all up. Naruto started to run over to stop it before it began when he heard the Eye spirit shout out, "Get out of the forest, humans." He came to a stop between the two groups. "Wait!" he shouted at them both while Rava landed by his side. "We can resolve this peacefully." "Stinky?" the Eye spirit said in surprise, which soon turned into happiness. "You came back. he said with a wide smile. It's good to see you again, my friend, he said with a smile. You and Rava are just in time to help us clear these tree-killing fire lovers out of here just like the old days. You are the one who's getting cleared out. Jaya spat out at the spirit. There's no need for violence. Naruto said to them both, I know there must be a way to work out a compromise, he said while above him, thunder rumbled in the distance. That was odd, considering there was barely a cloud in sight. You have a good heart, Stinky, the Eye spirit replied before growling out and pointing behind the blonde, but these fire tossers aren't like you. Spirits like him killed our friends, Jaya told him. I can't let them get away with that. The thunder grew louder and closer. From out of nowhere, storm clouds converged and darkened the entire sky. Lightning flashed and struck the earth, and for a moment, Naruto could have sworn he saw Vada looking down at them from the clouds, laughing at them. As they all heard the laughter, the spirits transformed into dark spirits. They stared at the villagers with utter hatred. We are protectors of the forest, the Eye spirit proclaimed with a much deeper voice. We won't let you burn it down. Oh no, Naruto thought in horrified realization. Rava realized what was happening just like he was. It's Vaatu. He's growing stronger, using their anger to turn them to his side. Jaya mustered up a flame and threw it at the dark spirits, which they avoided with ease. Wipe them out, the Eye spirit ordered. They started towards the humans, but Naruto pushed them back with airbending. The humans saw that as their chance to throw fire at the spirits, but he deflected that. He kept moving between the two groups, trying to prevent them from fighting. Stop, please, he begged as he kept them away. Neither side wanted to quit the fight. If anything, being denied just urged them on. As he kept fending them all, Naruto could see no end in sight. He had to make it all stop somehow. Rava, we need to combine our energies, he told her. Maybe then we'll have enough power to stop this, he said, as she flew towards him as he went still. She passed through his body, but did not come out the other side. The power he always felt when she passed through came back and stayed. Energy began to leak out from and coalesce around his body into a white aura. Just as the two sides were about to attack each other, he leapt into the air and held himself there. He bent water, earth, and fire into 3 rings around him, ready to use. Enough, he shouted down at the two groups. You need to stop fighting now, before you destroy each other, he called out to them all. The power he had was massive, so much so that it began affecting the spirits, making them pause and shudder. They started turning back to their original selves, with the Eye spirit one of the first. Stinky, what happened? It asked as it looked to him. He's controlling all 4 elements, Jaya said in an awed voice as he too looked up at his friend. But while Naruto was trying to make sure that they didn't fight, the power inside his body was beginning to grow out of his control. He concentrated, gritting his teeth, and tried to keep it in. But it was too powerful. Pain began to dance on and in his body. Naruto, I have to leave your body, or I'll destroy you, Rava said to him. She knew the danger of her possessing him. It was why she had never done it to a human before. He knew the risk too, but wouldn't budge on it. No, it's working. If you leave, the fighting will start again, he told her. He would not let that happen. He could make them stop fighting. They could make peace between each other, but they had to stop fighting first. He just had to hold on for a little bit longer so the rest of the spirits could turn back. He tried to hold on, but the pain that had been attacking him all over his body came together in one giant feeling that hit him all together at once. He let out a brief gasp of pain before blacking out. The elements he was bending vanished, making him start to fall to the ground, and Rava was cast out of his body. Naruto, she cried out, flying down and grabbing hold of him. She carried him away, while the humans and the spirits, now back to their dark selves again, finally clashed. URG, what happened? Naruto asked as he slowly came back to consciousness. He felt grass beneath him. He opened his eyes and saw Mula nearby, standing beneath trees. "Why am I in the forest?" he asked. He had been at the village. The mere thought of what could have happened there made him stand up and look over the nearby slope. He saw the battleground was empty, but the fact that a battle happened was plain to see. "We have to go back," he declared aloud, already going for the slope. Vato suddenly appeared at the slope, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't bother," the spirit told him. "Your human friends have already been annihilated." He heard those words, and his heart clenched. "No," he called out. "Enjoy your final days. See you at the end of the world." Vato laughed as he flew away, somehow managing to make it mocking as he went. Naruto watched him, and then turned his attention to finding Rava, having noticed that she was nowhere in sight. He started looking for her, and found the spirit of light behind a rock. She had grown so small that she could hide behind it perfectly. "I'm not the only one it took its toll on," he realized in shock as he listened to her shiver and moan in pain. "Rava," he said in horror. "I'm sorry, Naruto," she told him weakly as he picked her up and held her in his arms. She looked so tiny and fragile there. She was too small to travel by herself. As Mula came over to his side, he reached out, opened his traveling pack, and pulled out a teapot that he had picked up on his travels. He slid her in and cradled it in the nook of his arm. Then he climbed atop Mula and urged her on. They left the village and the forest behind. When she had regained enough of her strength to speak, Rava told them where they had to go. They had to go south. It was a journey that took many days, so much so that they turned into weeks, and then into months, summer turning to autumn. During the journey, they saw much evidence of Vada's growing power. Dark spirits were becoming more and more abundant, and growing so bold that they were beginning to look at the lion turtles to attack. Naruto tried to help, but more often than the lion turtles were able to take care of themselves. The further they went south, the colder the air became. The land became emptier, and the wind was sharper, forcing Naruto to wear a scarf around his neck and over his head. They were 3 weeks into traveling across the barren tundra when Naruto saw a blue beam of light shooting up into the sky from out a small forest. Rava spoke then. "We're almost there," she whispered out. She paused for a moment. "I was wrong about you, Naruto. I had no idea that humans were capable of such nobility and courage. I'm sorry that we do not have much more time together," she said apologetically. "Let's not give up before the battle's even begun. Who knows what will happen?" he replied with a smile as he looked ahead. "After all, this is my first harmonic convergence," he said, trying to make some humor. As Mula cleared the tree line, they got a clear view of the portal. It was coming straight out of the ground. "This is the southern portal to the spirit world," Rava declared. "Here, Vato and I will do battle once again at the place where the two worlds meet." Whatever it was and wherever it went, there was a serene-like quality to it. Naruto felt at peace just by being near it. Mula must have felt the same way because she did not shy away from it. She walked towards it calmly. Passing through the portal didn't feel odd like Naruto thought it might have been. In fact, it felt like just passing through a sheet of water. But once they passed through and came out the other side, Naruto could tell that they weren't in his world anymore. The first thing he saw was the giant tree off in the distance, but still closer than the red portal he saw directly opposite. The area around the portals and the tree could have been similar to the barren land in the mortal world, but this had been rougher, rockier. There were little streams all around them, and the sky was dark and foreboding. There seemed to be a path to the rocks and streams, something that almost seemed to flow in a particular direction. A shadow appeared from the other portal and grew thicker and bigger with each passing second. It didn't take long for Vato to emerge from the portal, and he loomed over the three of them. "Are you ready for our final battle, Rava?" he asked with a boasting tone in his voice. "Thanks to our friends separating us, I think this time I may be rid of you once and for all." Naruto got down from Mula and walked towards the dark spirit, Before you get to her, you'll have to go through me, he declared with a challenging look. The dark spirit found that to be little more than amusing, and he wasn't above showing it with a chuckle. No human can stand against me, he told Naruto. Naruto could admit that Vaatu was different from the last time he had seen him. He was much bigger than before, the markings on his body much defined, and he seemed to have a lot more tentacles than before. But Naruto wasn't going to back down. He hadn't before now, and he wasn't going to stop. He had made a promise, and he was going to keep it. Haven't you heard the legends? He asked Vaatu. I'm not a regular human anymore, he said with a grin lining his cheeks. He threw a barrage of fire at the dark spirit, who only flew into the air to avoid them. He kept up the barrage, trying to hit Vaatu. But he managed to avoid them all with a grace that was enviable. He landed in between Naruto and Neela, spooking the cat deer away, and swatted the human away from the portal. While he was airborne, the spirit followed him and loomed over him when he landed. I lived 10,000 lifetimes before the first of your kind crawled out of the mud, he shouted. His markings started glowing with a purple energy. He arched back and lunged forward, firing a beam of the same colored energy. The beam carved through the ground as it reached Naruto. But either Vaatu did not have a good aim, or he wanted to draw out the fight, because only the edge of the beam hit the human before disappearing. But even the edge of the beam was enough to send him flying again. It was I who broke through the divide that separated the plane of spirits from the material world, Vaatu declared as he flew lazily around him, and then firing the beam again. He followed Naruto, clearly enjoying what he was doing. To hate me is to give me breath. To fight me is to give me strength. Now prepare to face oblivion. Naruto got up just in time to see the beam coming towards him. He used his fire to push him into the air and away. The beam tried to follow, but he was able to avoid it. He couldn't stay in the air for long, landing in a roll and trying to come back up to his feet. But the pain his body had sent him back down to his knees. It had been only a couple of minutes since the fight had started, and he was already this beaten. He knew why. He was going up against a spirit that was ancient with only one element. He thought he could do it by himself, but he had been wrong. So wrong. There was only one way to make this fight at least somewhat even. Rava. He called out to Vaatu's opposite and his friend. The only way to win is together, he told her. She heard his plea and flew out of the teapot. Before Vaatu could do anything to stop her, she entered his body. The power he had felt months before came back, and that same energy surrounded his body. Vaatu flew at him, trying to crush him with a tentacle. But he leapt onto a cloud he made and flew away. The tentacles gave chase, smacking down on the ground trying to hit him. But he had learned enough from the bison to know how to move away quickly. His opponent kept missing him, and he kept putting ground between them. One of the tentacles did hit his cloud, and he flew into the air as it dissipated. Naruto twisted in midair and bit a strong blast of fire at Vaatu, pushing him back. Naruto tried to land on his feet, but the momentum knocked him down and sent him rolling. His world became a blurry mess for a moment, but then it cleared and he found his feet beneath him again. He pushed deep and used the earth to send him flying right at Vaatu. Naruto started twisting himself to put some spin into his next attack. He tried to kick out a stream of fire, but got a tentacle in his chest before he could get it fully out. He fell back to the ground, forming a cloud underneath his feet to keep himself going. He reached out to a nearby stream and bent the water at Vaatu. He hit the spirit a couple of times, but it didn't seem to do anything. I need something with power to it, Naruto thought to himself. He looked down briefly at the ground and knew where to find it. He bent out 3 giant boulders and carried them into the air. He passed Vaatu and swung around, throwing the boulders at him. But he glided past them like they didn't matter. Naruto realized his mistake. The earth might have been strong, but it was slow. He would need something else to work. He tried thinking up a new tactic as Vaatu came at him, tentacles swinging. He flew past but got hit by one of them. His cloud fell apart, and he fell to the ground. But he quickly bent a new one and flew away from the spirit, bending fire at him all the way. But it was only a few seconds before the pain hit him hard again. He lost control of the cloud and fell to his hands and knees. His body was telling him that he couldn't keep doing this, that the power was too much. It wasn't the only one. I have to leave you. If I stay any longer, you will die, Rava insisted. He knew that. His body was only alive through the pain. All he wanted was for it to end. But he couldn't let it be like that. It doesn't matter. If you leave me now, Batu will destroy everything. We have to finish this together, he said, wiping a trickle of blood from his chin. He hopped back up onto his feet, bending a cloud under it to carry him. He charged straight at Batu, who did the same. When the dark spirit fired another beam of energy, he bent the air beneath him to send him flying high in the sky. He flew over the spirit and bent a stream of fire at its back. He landed, but the pain drove him to his hands and knees again. I have to move, he said, forcing himself to stand up again. As he did, Batu struck, grabbing hold of him with a tentacle. First he was dragged across the ground, feeling it scrape hard against his back. Then he was flung into the air and felt the energy beam slam into him. It felt like getting hit with a hammer, pierced by a sword and a spear, electrocuted, buried alive, drowned, set aflame, and losing his air all in one great anguishing moment. When the moment ended, he fell to the ground, and it was all only when he stopped that he realized that he was up against the southern portal. He tried to get up, but Vata flew over to him and shot a tentacle at him, holding him down. The harmonic convergence is about to begin. The era of Rava is over, the dark spirit boasted. Naruto tried to get up, to fight back, but the pain made him too weak against the tentacle. All he could do was lay there. Above them, the portals bent forward, meeting each other over the tree. As soon as the ends met, their colors turned to the same shining gold. Lightning and thunder boomed from the connected portals, making them a virtual rod of a storm. But it wasn't just that. The very air thrummed with energy from the entirety of the universe. Naruto could feel it pressing down on him, like a wet sponge trying to cool him off. As Vata turned to look at the connecting portals, he glowed purple. His power grew to immeasurable levels unlike anything Naruto had sensed before their fight. The dark spirit was taking in the energy around them, and making itself stronger. But as his power grew, so did Rava's own. Naruto's body glowed blue with her markings on his chest, lifting the pain away. Naruto, do you trust me? She asked him. You know I do, he replied. After the year they had spent together, how could he not trust her? Place your hand on the portal, she urged him. What will happen if I do? Something new, something different, will arise, she answered, sounding unsure. Even I do not know what will happen. But it will give you the power to defeat Vatu. How? He asked. I just know. Her markings and the blue glow left, giving him back to the pain. It sounded strange, but what could he do? Vata had him. It would take a moment for the spirit to crush him now, if he felt like it. But all it would take for him to touch the portal was a moment too. Fighting the pain, he lifted his right hand, reached back, and touched the southern portal. For a moment, it felt like he was just touching water. But then the portal hummed to his touch, and the blue glow came back, washing over him like water, relieving his pain as it moved. When it reached Vata's tentacle, he pulled it away with a grunt of surprise, looking back to see what was happening. But it was too late. Naruto was completely engulfed in the blue glow. The cosmic energy he had taken traveled down deep into his soul. He could feel it. His body started telling him that something else was happening to him. Rava, he tried to ask, unsure of what was happening. It felt like the power he had when they merged, but too much of it. It felt like he was full to burst, and he just might do that. Do not fight it, Naruto, she told him, as she let the flow of the energy carry her deep into his soul. He did as he was told. He did not fight it. He let it happen. The cosmic energy carried Rava into his soul. There it was altered so she could be a part of it. When that happened, when she became a part of him, his eyes glowed white. In that one moment, something changed in him. In that one moment, he saw farther than he could have ever seen before. In that one moment, he could see the universe. And he saw that it was beautifully glorious. But to look at the whole of the universe was too much for one person. He forced himself to look away from it all, falling down to his hands and knees. The work was not done. The cosmic energy was building inside of him, changing everything that he was and had been before. It became overwhelming, coming to a boiling. He couldn't hold it in. So he lurched upwards, threw his head back, and screamed as the energy came out in a great explosion of light. At the sight of the light, Badu was forced to fly away lest he get caught in it all. It was only when it began to fade that he dared to look back. He saw Naruto standing back onto his feet, his body still glowing blue and his eyes a bright white. But he looked past that. He looked deeper, and he saw the truth. No! This cannot be. He cried out in horror of what stood before him. Naruto did not say anything back. He was feeling everything with new eyes and new knowledge. He was different now. Not quite human, not quite spirit, but something in between. But what did that mean? We are bonded forever, Rava declared. Yes, they were. Naruto could feel her being a part of him. And he could feel what they had to do. As the blue glow faded, Naruto attacked Batu with a renewed strength. But he did not strike with just one element. How could he? What he knew now by instinct eclipsed what he had learned for a year, and even before that, making it all seem laughable. No, there was a better way to fight, and he knew how to do it. Better yet, he knew how to end it. He struck with a barrage of water, fire, and earth, using them with better ease than he ever would have thought he had. Badu tried to dodge like he had before, but these attacks came in faster and stronger than anything Naruto had previously thrown at him, catching him every single time. As the last giant boulder got him in the middle, it stunned him for a second. But a second was all Naruto needed to encase him in an orb of air. Then he surrounded the orb with a ring of fire, air, water, and earth each, furthering tightening his control over it all. He guided the orb towards the tree and the large gap it had in its trunk. Once there, all it took was one last push of air to send the orb into the tree, where it became engulfed in a great light that spread out across the edges of the area before disappearing. Badu was now encased in an orb of energy inside the tree, unable to move even to break free. This is your prison now, Naruto declared as he felt his new power recede back into his soul, losing the glow in his eyes. And I will close the portal, so no human will ever be able to physically enter the spirit world and release you, he declared to Batu. Do you think that this will hold me? Batu demanded. Yes, I do, Naruto said as he turned his back on the spirit and walked towards the northern portal. Mula came to his side, and he hopped aboard without even thinking about it, and only dismounted once at the northern portal. He reached out his hand, placing it on the beam, and used what he suddenly understood to bend the energy into itself, sealing the portal close. That was one portal closed. Now he had to close the other one. But before he could do that, there was something else he had to do. What? Was what all the spirits shouted down at him after he told them what he wanted them to do. They all began to jabber at him, voices mixing together to create a noise that just buzzed inside of his ear. Why would we leave? One spirit, which looked like it was a mixture of tree and monkey, demanded. You must, Naruto told him. I doubt that. We have made our homes here. We shouldn't leave. Other spirits started agreeing with it. They seemed to band together beneath its leadership. He faced the spirit down from where he stood in the midst of them all. He had called all the spirits together in the mortal world and created an immense cave in the depth of the earth to hold them all. Now they were there, and they had to listen. And what will you do when the humans come? No human would dare leave the lion turtles. One of the spirits, looking like a great glob of water, shouted with an echoing voice, "They're too scared." "And if they do, we'll drive them back," shouted a spirit that was ironically a stone shaped with a human face on it. "And what if they keep coming back?" He asked them all. "What if they keep coming back in force and keep attacking you all? It'll just mean more senseless fighting for both sides," he explained. The eye spirit, who had been quiet this entire time, finally spoke. "And you want us to leave this world, Stinky?" it asked. He nodded yes. The spirits must stop fighting with humans and return to their home in the spirit world. I will teach men to respect the spirits so that balance will be maintained, he said in a saddened tone. He looked at them all and declared, "I will be the bridge between our two worlds." The spirits would have argued long and hard about what he had said, and they did. But he kept repeating that they had to go back to the spirit world to maintain the balance, and that he would help the maintaining. They might have scoffed if they couldn't sense that he was different now, someone who was both mortal and spirit at the same time. The eye spirit took little convincing before siding with him. That seemed to be the one thing he needed. After that, the spirits agreed more or less to go back to the spirit world and stay there. It ended up being a mass migration of spirits marching towards the southern portal, entering its light, and disappearing from his world. The last spirit to leave was the eye spirit, who turned to Naruto and bowed like a master greeting a student. Naruto returned the gesture, "Goodbye, old friend." He bid farewell to the best of friends he could have had. "Goodbye, Stinky," the eye spirit said with a smile before stepping through the portal. Once it was through, his friend closed the portal forever. A week later, he found himself standing before the lion turtle he had first lived on. He had been called to it when he had been passing through the forest he had been first banished to. But now, the lion turtle stood before a cliff facing the sea, and everyone that had still been living on its back stood on that cliff. Cho the Elder stepped forward to speak. "Great Lion Turtle, what is the reason that you have called us all here?" he asked the great creature. The lion turtle didn't answer him. Instead, its eyes found Naruto, who had been standing adjacent to the whole group, come forward. It rumbled. All eyes fell to the blonde. The Cho brothers looked at him with their usual expressions of arrogant disdain. Once those looks would have made him want to punch them or steal food right from under their noses. But those days had long since passed. Now when he looked at them, he didn't feel towards them, good or bad, Great Lion Turtle. The biggest brother spoke. "Naruto is an exile from the city. You yourself said." He was stopped when the lion turtle interrupted him. "He will come forward." The lion turtle spoke firmly, and this time there was no arguing. Naruto stepped forward, walking past the chows without even bothering to give them a look, and stood before the lion turtle. "I am here," he announced himself. "You have changed," the lion turtle noted. He didn't say anything in reply, thinking it would be redundant. "Do you know why you are here?" it asked him. "I felt you call out to me," he answered truthfully. It was a weird thing to say, but that was the only explanation he could think of. He had been passing by and heard the lion turtle one night, telling him to come. "Yes." "Why?" "You should hear our words ourselves, as the maker of this new era." Those words were confusing, and he was compelled to ask, "Words?" The lion turtle nodded its head slowly. "The world is entering a new age. Our time protecting mankind is over. We will no longer give humans the power of the elements," it declared, its words washing over them all. As they all stood and watched, it vanished beneath the sea. Naruto watched until he saw the shadow vanish beneath the water. He clasped his hands in prayer. "Safe travels," he offered the lion turtle. "What do we do now?" someone asked. "I don't know," another replied. Naruto turned around, looking around at them all. They all had looks of panic and shock, unsure of what to do next. He had that exact same look when he had been banished from the city all those years ago. They would need someone to guide them to a new life. But it couldn't be him. There were more lion turtles out there, and they would be dropping their humans off. He couldn't show favoritism. We have to find shelter now. An old familiar voice declared. Naruto took one look and saw that it was the leader of the huntsmen. Just with a few more gray hairs, we take to the forests and make our homes there, he said. Everyone there began nodding in agreement, thinking that it was a good plan. Everyone except for the chows, that is. Now that there was a plan suggested, Naruto felt compelled to say something. Jiraiya's village is only a 2-day journey from here. He told the huntsman, I can lead you all to them. I'm sure that they will welcome you all, he offered. The huntsman nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto then looked at the others, who now had no home at all. If you are all ready, we can start the journey. Wait! Shouted Cho the Elder, making them all stop. He looked insulted while his sons looked surprised. What are you all doing? He demanded angrily. We're finding shelter, the lead huntsman said to him. No, you're not. You are under my authority, and you will do as I say. That has always been the way, or have you forgotten that fact? He asked with an arrogant sneer on his face. Now, our first order of business is for you all to build a house for me and my family. Then we will. He stopped when he saw everyone was gathering around the huntsman. What are you all doing? His middle son asked them all. We're not obeying you anymore, the huntsman declared. Cho the Elder grew red at this declaration. His body trembled. Have you forgotten who I am? He shouted, spit flying out of his mouth. I am your lord. You are nothing but peasants, raged the fat elder. You are the lord, on the lion turtle. The huntsman sneered in response as he cast a disregarding look at the fat man and his equally fat sons, who thought themselves great warriors because they wielded weapons. But we're not on the lion turtle, not anymore. You're not the lord of anything now. You're just a fat little man who thinks only himself, he said before he turned his back on the chows along with the rest of the people. Cho the Elder and his sons were left standing there on the cliff, watching their former people walk away. They wouldn't survive an hour in the spirit wilds with some of the traps Jiraiya's people made, not that anyone cared really. Many years later, Naruto did as he promised, and led them to Jiraiya's village. To his immense relief, he found that Vado had lied that day. The villagers were still alive. Naruto stood by and watched as the newcomers were welcomed with open arms, and he thought that his role would be simple enough. But he turned out to be wrong. Just like his former home, the lion turtles all over this side of the planet were dropping their humans off and leaving them. People were confused and scared, fearing that spirits would come and kill them all. Naruto traveled all over, convincing them that the spirits went back to their own world and they were safe. He even became a teacher, helping refine those who had the elements into proper bending forms. But even as he tried to soothe them and teach them, the fear and confusion were still there. When they could not take it out on the spirits, they began fighting each other. People were going to war over differences in ideals, positions, or just to grab more land. No matter how many fights he stopped, another one seemed to be brewing and a second was ready to erupt. The years passed. The fights continued to erupt. He kept forcing them to stop. He continued to teach that peace was the only way to live in the new world. But with each passing year, the fights grew into wars. Wars that he couldn't stop before it was too late, and he could only minimize the damage. Friends died or turned against his beliefs. Jiraiya had been the first and most painful, becoming a vicious warlord that was set on conquering new lands. When they finally fought, Naruto struck him down with tears in his eyes, and buried him with the respect their past friendship asked for. But even as the years passed, he kept going. He kept teaching, and kept stopping people from fighting. He started to be given names by the people he stopped and taught. Teacher, stranger, wanderer, intruder. Peacemaker. Bridge to the spirits. Avatar of Rava. As he got older, they seemed to use that last one more and more, until the other names fell by the wayside. Even the full name itself faded away, until only the first part stayed true. The years continued to pass. The faces kept changing around him, until everyone he had first known were long gone. Even Mula, his ever-faithful companion, had passed on. But he still kept fighting to bring peace between people, even as nations, tribes, and kingdoms were forged and fought. More often than he would have liked, he found himself on one side of the fight instead of being neutral. And it was after 500 years of doing what he had promised that it finally came to an end. He sat on the ground at the edge of the now quiet battlefield, resting his back against an entrenched stone ring. His armor, for he wore armor now, he had to, was a mixture of old and recent, the most ancient being the shoulder plate he had taken off Jaya. He only had to look up or off to the left to see the results of the battlefield. He only had to listen to hear the sound of things burning or the distant moaning of survivors. He only had to sniff to smell the fire, and the smoke and the smell of death. He wasn't sure if it had been a wound given in the battle, or if it was just his age finally catching up to him. He was older than 500 years after all, but he could feel the end coming. And he knew that for all he had done in that time, it wasn't enough. His hair was a silky white from age and his goatee was shaved off, but if he still had one it would have been the same color as his hair had been. "I'm sorry, Rava," he said to his one constant companion, "I failed to bring peace." Even with Vato locked away, darkness still surrounds humanity. There wasn't enough time, he said weakly. If he could, he would have chuckled at the irony of his own words. "Don't worry," Rava whispered to him as things began to darken. "We will be together for all of your lifetimes. And we will never give up." Those words were a comfort to him. As he breathed his last, their combined spirit left through his mouth and dissipated into the air. He closed his eyes. The last thing he heard was a small baby crying, and he smiled as the darkness engulfed his vision. He could finally rest now. If only he knew that his journey was just beginning. "Hold on, Miss Senna, I can see the head now," a woman said in front of a screaming woman who had a vice grip on her husband's hand. "Aha, fuck you, Tonrak, next time we have children you're carrying the little bastard for 9 fucking months, oh fuck," she roared in agony as her husband was frothing at the mouth, unable to say anything because her other hand was gripping his balls through his clothes, getting a pop as well as a whimper from the man. He thought in excruciating pain. "Well, there goes the left one," gasping for breath, he said weakly. "It's okay, sweetie, just a little more," he said to his wife. Cutting him off, she said, gripping tighter, "Fuck you, you fucking asshole. You did this to me, and if I weren't in such excruciating pain I'd shove a ice pole the size of Avatar Aang's statue up your ass, and leave you there for all of the world to see," she roared in pain. "Alright, Senna, just give me one more good strong push," the nurse said, guiding the woman, while silently sympathizing with the agonizing husband, since this isn't the first, or will it be the last time she'll hear threats like that towards the husband, especially from the mouths of earth-bending women. Toph Beifong was probably one of the worst she had seen. "Aha!" she cried when a second softer cry was heard, as the nurse clipped the umbilical cord, handing the bundle to her after she collapsed on the bed. "Congratulations, Senna, Tonrak. It's a beautiful baby boy," she said, showing the sleeping boy with whisker marks and black hair on his head. "Look at him, he's so beautiful, isn't he, Tonrak?" Senna said, getting a nod from her husband, brushing a hand through his own hair. Tonrak kneeled next to his panting and exhausted wife. "You did well, my love," he told her as he placed a kiss on her forehead. Senna gave a weak smile. "So what shall we name him?" she asked her husband. Tonrak looked at his son, his newborn son, his own flesh and blood, with a smile. "I can see a lot of mischief in his eyes, but I can also see a lot of compassion and a will to protect those close to him. I can sense that his chi reserves are immense. He will definitely break a lot of girls' hearts. How about we name him Naruto?" he asked his wife. Senna looked at her son and smiled. Maelstrom, huh? It suits him perfectly, Senna said, smiling. It looks like we both got what we wanted after all. We finally have a family, Senna said happily. Tonrak nodded his head. Yeah, I guess we do, he said with a smile on his face. And thus, the world's first avatar was brought back to stop an ancient calamity. The world would be changed forever in the coming years. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now, and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.